Afternoon. Hello, everyone. Welcome to March's monthly training. Today, we're going to be talking about book clubs, one of my favorite things to talk about. And so I'm excited to be able to share that with you. I hope you guys are doing well. I know the weather has been super crazy for a lot of you. I have a friend out on the East Coast who had school canceled because of some tornado threat. I don't know, some crazy stuff out there. But spring is on its way. It is coming tomorrow, and I'm super excited about that. I hope you are too. I know that many of you are either just coming off of spring break or you're getting ready to go on spring break. And so I hope that you find some time during your spring break to really just enjoy yourself and refresh yourself and get ready for that last stretch of the school year. I have one more day with my students, and then we are also on spring break next week. So I'm excited about that. Today, I just want to go over a couple of things in the community, and then I have some slides about book clubs that I'm going to go ahead and share with you. So let me go ahead and share my screen and show you a couple of things. Oh, nope, that's not what we wanted. So hold on. Share my screen. This one. There we go. See, if you were here on Monday, I figured it out for Monday, but I did not get it figured out for today. Anyway, technology, I know we've all been there. All right, I took some notes here of this things to kind of remember as I get going before I jump into the slides, because I always get off and think I should have said something else. So first of all, welcome. This is our community where we have monthly trainings, weekly Q&As, try to provide some resources. Remember that this group is for all of us and really trying to build a community that's supporting teachers in the classroom, because that's one of the things that I know we need the most as teachers is we need support. We need real support, not structured support that the district comes up with that you just have to sit through the trainings and then go and do the real work in your classroom. Like real support for teachers who are doing the work every single day. So thank you for being here. We currently have 66 members, and I'm thrilled that you are here. I was checking out the statistics last night, so I know that you guys are coming back and viewing the Q&As and grabbing the resources, and so I'm happy to provide that for you. I would really encourage you to participate in the group by leaving a comment or even just liking a few things to kind of get some momentum going so that we can really become a community instead of this being just about me and the videos. So I'm all right. So we have monthly trainings, like I said. This is our second monthly training, and so I'm thrilled to bring you book clubs. But I want to show you up here our learning tab. So in our learning tab, this one right here, monthly training replays, you'll be able to find all of the replays. Right now, there is only one from last month, and then I will upload this one when we're done here. And I'm not sure why it's showing this. I may need to add a picture, so I'll have to look into that. But you can see monthly's February's monthly training that was all about book talks. So teacher book talks, student book talks. You can go back and get that replay there, and then I will just continue to add them here. So you have them at your access just anytime you want to come in and get some ideas or to kind of refresh what we talked about. You are able to do that. And then I am still working on April's training. Here we go. So I posted a post here for April's training. There's two things I'm kind of thinking about as we are kind of finishing out the year. I know some of us have 2 months left after March, and some of us have 3 months left after March. And so I know we're winding down here. So I have two topics in mind. One is possibly talking about rebuilding reading stamina after spring break. Whether your spring break is in March or in April, I think it's still a good refresher if that's a topic we want to talk about. And then as we're getting close to the end of the school year, student reflection becomes really important about improving our ability, or our students' ability to think about how they're learning. And so those are two choices that I have for you. You can just comment one or two, or if you have another topic, you're welcome to add that as well. But in the comments, just right down here, just let me know which one you would be most interested in. And then those are the ones, that was one I will choose for next month. All right. Our discussion today, as I've said, is on book clubs. And so I want to direct you over here to our teacher resources. If you look at our teacher resources all the way down here at the bottom, there is a book club planning guide for you. You can just click on this book club planning guide. You don't have to enter your email or anything. You can just download it right from here. No emails will come to you about it. It's just there for you for being part of the community, but it is related to what we're talking about today. So you may find this helpful. All right, let me go ahead and unshare. Stop sharing, there we go. And so today I'm going to use a presentation that I presented at a summit a couple of years ago. I've made some tweaks for us, but that's why I have a slide deck for us. I won't always have a slide deck. Sometimes I'll just come on and I'll talk about whatever our topic is. I do find slides can help me to stay focused because, as you can see, I kind of ramble a little bit. So let's go ahead. I'm going to try to share my screen again and get us over to those slides. I think it's this one. Oh, I know, we can do this. Let me check and see what you're seeing. Perfect. All right. I'm going to try to keep my eye on this. Let me close a couple of my tabs so that we don't have too much going. Perfect. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about student-led book clubs today. There's about 18 slides, and I'm going to try to watch the time. It's 7 minutes after the hour, so I'm going to be done by the half hour. Last month, I went a really long time, almost 40 minutes, but I want to try to keep these just 2.5 hours. So they're just quick, some quick information that you can use in your classroom either tomorrow or in the weeks to come. I want it to be relevant to things that you are looking for today. Book clubs are a great activity to do in the spring. And so that's why I wanted to bring this to you now, because a lot of us are planning for our final term of the year. So what are we talking about when I say book clubs? Book clubs are really just small groups of students talking about the same book. Ideally, they would be choice books, so students would get to choose the book that they're reading and the book that their group is reading. I typically will choose books for students, meaning I might have 7 books that we preview as a class, and then the students get to decide which book they want to read, and that way they still have a voice in it. I have run book clubs where every student was reading a different book, and then they were focused around a similar theme. And so that we talked about that theme. So that's where all the questions came from, where that was that theme. I will say it did not work very well in middle school. So I would lean towards bringing the books and letting students choose from a limited amount of books that you have. But book clubs in the classroom, when done authentically, bring conversations that are real conversations. It mimics a real world experience. And that's one of the things I really like about them, because as an adult, I attend book clubs, and I love book clubs for a variety of reasons. And being able to bring that real world experience into the classroom, I think helps students understand why we're reading. We're not just reading because there's a test coming up. We're not just reading because that's what you have to do in school, but we're trying to build these lifelong readers. And so book clubs are one of those ways that we can bring that authentic real world experience to students. Why do book clubs work? Book clubs work because students have choice, and anytime we can bring choice into the classroom, I want to do that. The more choices students have, then the more ownership they have over their learning. And that is what I'm all about, giving students ownership over what it is that they're learning and how they're learning. And book clubs are a way that we can do that. Book clubs work because students are the ones that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. They're creating their timelines. They're creating their reading within some structure that we're going to talk about, but they have a lot of choice in what's going to happen in this unit. And so that makes it more authentic, and it makes it more motivating and enjoyable for the students because they really take on that I get to do this. It's all about what I want to do. And they feel some power, and that's great. Book clubs work because they lead to, again, authentic conversations that are student led. As I see here, we have an error. Sorry about that. It's not students lead. Oh, well, I guess the students lead the conversations. I was sorry. Anyway, I'm going to move on. All right. Like I said, book clubs are that student ownership and engagement. So, what does it look like in practice? It means that the students create their own reading plan. So you've gathered some books. Students have picked their books, and we'll talk about grouping here in a little bit. But students create their reading plan as it fits into your plan. But they create their reading plan, how many pages they're going to read, how they're going to finish. They decide what they're going to take notes on instead of creating worksheets. So when I go to my book club, I haven't completed a ton of worksheets, and I'm not coming to the book club with just trying to spout off or read through these answers on this worksheet. It's real conversation. So what are the things that um, are you noticing in the book? What are the things that are you connecting with? And there's going to be some guidelines, but the bulk of what's happening is going to be student led. Students get to decide what their topics are that they're going to discuss. They get to write and bring the questions. And so because they're putting so much into this, the students, they reference the text. They sometimes fight in order to talk to each other, and they want to discuss what's happening. And so I super enjoy, I know that sounded silly, but I really enjoy book clubs in my class. It's one of my favorite times of the year. I have had years where I've got to do multiple rounds of book clubs, and a few years ago, well, I guess, several years now, because it was before COVID, we had an amazing librarian where I worked. And so she would open up the library for us to do book clubs. And so we would go to the library and we would go to the little nooks that she had, and they would have book clubs sitting on bean bags, and they would have book clubs, sitting amongst the shelves of the books in the library. And it was amazing. I enjoyed that. And honestly, I miss that. All right. So we're going to talk about two different things: the teacher role during a book club and the student role during the book club. So as a teacher, you're going to do the bulk of the work, the heavy lifting, before the book club even starts. And so that's why I also think that spring is a great time to do this, because for me, in the districts that I've worked in, we have spring conferences, and unfortunately, a lot of parents don't come to middle school and high school conferences. And so even though I had to be there for 12 hours for 2 days, I had a lot of time where there wasn't much for me to do. So I utilized that time for planning. And so I could plan my book clubs. Also testing, we tested state testing in usually in April. And so we still had planning time, prep periods, and those things. And so any planning time I got on those days, I would devote to planning book clubs, so that the work was done before I had to interact or introduce it to the students. And so before book clubs begin, that's where you're going to want to do a lot of the thinking. So we're going to be selecting the text. What are you going to have the students choose from? And we'll talk about book choice at the end. What are you going to have the students choose from? You could do it where you're having them read all historical fiction. And so you're going to pair the book club with a research activity. And those two work together because students are still reading while they're also in the middle of a writing project. That's a great idea. You could do book clubs based on skills. So you're going to identify the skills that you need the students to practice. You could use it as a test prep because you want them to realistically practice the skills that you've been teaching them all year. And so you're going to identify the skills that you want to practice. You want the students to practice during the book club round. You're going to plan your mini lessons. So a book club isn't just go read and go talk. It's very much directed by you, just in a different way. And it provides the feeling of control and power for the students because they have so much say in it. So you're going to still teach. You're still going to give lessons. If you have identified the skills, you're going to still provide the mini lesson that's going to help the students remember what you want them to do, what those skills are. You're going to still be teaching your students. Okay. You're going to create the groups and you're going to create the timeline. I highly suggest, especially if it's your first round of book clubs, that you devote 4 weeks. That doesn't mean 4 total weeks of your class is book clubs. Like I said, you can combine it with a writing project or you can combine it with something else. Book clubs are very flexible. So the end of the year, again, is a great time to do them because you have assemblies and music concerts and multiple days off. And so your class schedule gets off. So it can be very flexible, but you're going to create the timeline. And again, if it's your first one, I definitely would plan at least 4 calendar weeks to get through the first round or to get through your first book club. All right. And then during the book clubs, so once you've assigned the book club, you've gotten the kids into groups, your job becomes to monitor their progress. So we're going to look again at some specific things you do, but you're going to monitor the progress. Again, we're not just saying go read the book and go talk about it. You're still very much part of it. You just become more of a facilitator. You're going to confer with students. So you're going to still check in with every student at least once, more often if you can. And you're going to adjust your instruction based on student needs. As students are discussing, maybe you see that 3 groups don't understand themes. So you're going to come back and you're going to plan another mini lesson about that. Or maybe groups aren't really understanding what kinds of questions that they should be asking to promote discussion. So maybe you're going to come back and do a mini lesson on that. So this is where your work really is the heaviest, is in that before time, and then you're just adjusting during. So like it said down here at the bottom, once book clubs begin, the teacher's role shifts to facilitator and somebody of that support person for them. All right, let's talk about grouping students. You're going to group students according to the book they want to read. This is super, super, super important because think about if you were in an adult book club and you go to the book club and they've picked a book that you don't like the topic, or you don't like the author, or it's just boring, whatever it is that you don't like. Are you going to read it? Are you going to be engaged? No. And that's the same for the students. So yes, I make my students pick their book out of 7 that I've chosen, but out of those 7, there's a variety of choices and topics and things that they can choose from, that they should be able to find a book. And if I can get more books, great. But I usually try to have 5 to 7 choices for my students. And my class sizes work 28 to 32, depending on the year. All right. Why do we want to group by book choice? Okay. Students who choose the same book, often they share similar interests. So they're going to find things within the book to talk about. That academic conversation is going to come out more. They're going to stay engaged with the reading because they're interested in it. And they're going to contribute more naturally because they have things in common. Okay? Book choice leads to stronger conversations. Again, as an adult in a book club, if I don't like the topic, I'm not going to really have anything to say. And I know we sometimes have to force our kids to talk. And so by providing them with books where there's some kind of similarities or some kind of interest, they're going to talk about it more naturally. This next part about grouping our students is just keep them small. You really, really want to keep them small. I would say no more than 4 students in a group, because it's better to have 2 groups with the same book than to have a large group. So if I have 5 students that have picked one book, I would do a pair and a group of 3. And the reason for that is that the bigger the groups get, the easier it is for students to opt out because they know other people will be talking, and they're less accountable. The smaller the group, then the more accountability that's naturally built in, and they're more accountable to their peers than they are to the teacher. And if you're grouping them by interest, you're grouping them by the book that they chose, they're going to already have some intrinsic motivation. And so smaller groups are going to help. As you're grouping, consider your personalities. You want students who work well together. You know who your leaders are. You know your students best. You wouldn't want to put like three very shy students together who none of them will speak, but you also don't want to put together, students that don't get along, or students who anytime there's a conversation are just always at each other because they're trying, this is a power struggle. So your students best. Consider your personalities. When I have students look at the books, I always have them write down three choices. I say I will guarantee that you will get your first or second choice. If there's a situation where I can't give them their first or second choice, I always have a discussion with the students about that, because I really want students to find a book that they're interested in and not worried about being in a group with their friend. And so I never just tell students, go find your group and then tell me what book you want. I always do it where the students are previewing the book, write down what they want, and then I take the time to put together their groups. I know that's a pain. I know that that is something that none of us like to do, but I'm telling you, you're going to get a better result if you do it that way. Okay. All right. So you're going to have some in-class work days as students are planning and preparing. So what are you going to do during those days? So this is where you're going to be going around and you're going to be checking in with students. You're going to verify that your student groups look good. First of all, first and foremost, and do it early, because sometimes with best intentions, we have students on paper and we've got these groups, and then we put it into practice and you can immediately see like, oh, that group's not going to work. So, first and foremost, check that your groups look good and that students can work together. You're going to, during plan time, you're going to be sure that student plans correlate to the timeline that you've provided for them. So you're going to tell them, what days they're going to be meeting as a whole group, what days are going to be reading days. You're going to have all of that planned ahead of time. And so when students are working in the group or working on their planning days, you're going to make sure that their timeline matches your timeline and that their timeline is realistic. So some students will try to be sneaky and they'll be like, we're going to read 5 pages this week and 6 pages next week, and then on the very last week we're going to read 200 pages. Okay, well, that's not realistic. It doesn't mean that they have to divide it up evenly. This is where I really, really try to bring in that real world experience, and I remind students to think about, what do they have coming up this month? Are they in a sport where maybe they have state coming up, or they have games every week? Maybe they know there's a family vacation coming up and they're not going to be at school. And so even though we're doing this in class and we're not really worrying about homework, we are worried about students coming to school. So we want to make sure that they can realistically get through the book that they've chosen in the timeline that they've created. And so you're not telling them no, but you're trying to guide and lead them and facilitate a timeline that's going to actually work for them. All right. And then this is a really important one, especially if you have strong people in your class. You want to be sure that the group plan was created with input from all members. So as they plan out as they plan out how they're going to accomplish their book club, you want to make sure that everybody has had a voice. All right. So a little bit of the same in class work days. This is where you're going to check in with students. Make sure that you are checking in with every student at least once during the unit. It's really easy to kind of just let your high readers go and forget to check in with them, but check in with them. It can be 5 minutes or less. And I know some of you might be going, 5 minutes with each student. Really depends on, classes. So maybe you're going to spend just like maybe 5 to 6 minutes with a group and you're going to touch base with each student. That works too, but just make sure that you're still checking in with students. You're not just letting them go. You want to check on their progress, making sure that they're actually getting through the reading. This is where you're going to provide extra support. If you have students on IEPs or 504s, they might need some extra reading support, and this would be the time that you can do that. Or this would be a good time if you are lucky enough to have an IA that can come in and support the reading portion of it. This would be a good time to do that. And then you're going to be taking note in your head of anything that you might need to come back and reteach as a whole group. Or maybe you just need to teach one group. You just need to do a quick little mini lesson with one group about something that's confusing for them. Maybe there's something specific in that book, or maybe there's some prior knowledge that they don't have about a specific topic that you want to be able to provide for them. So those are the things that you're going to be doing on your work days. And because everybody has a job, it's not really trying to pull a small group. They're already in small groups, but you're just providing that additional support where students need it. All right, so now let's shift to the student role, because there's a lot that is put on the students. Again, at the end of the year, we're taking all of the things that we've been teaching all year, or if you're lucky enough in a school where people work together, all the things that they've worked together for all, middle school, and now you're in 8th grade, and you're transferring that responsibility back to the students. And this is a piece that gets missed in many, many, many districts. We are here to support, but we also have to release that responsibility back to the students in order for them to have ownership over their learning. I remind my students all the time that school doesn't happen to them, but they get to be part of school. And so here we are with some student responsibilities. They're responsible for completing the assigned reading. The assigned reading is the book. And then if their group decides that in the first week, we're going to read 35 pages, then they are responsible for reading those 35 pages. They're responsible for using their class time to do that. If they can and want to read it outside of school, they're welcome to do that. If they need to come in and read it at lunch or before school or after school, you are putting that onus and that responsibility onto the student. You're providing the time, but you're putting the responsibility on the student to actually be using that time. And I know that can be scary, especially with a lot of the behaviors that we are seeing right now. But it's something that as an educated community, we need to start doing. Students are responsible for preparing questions and notes. So I do like to have a form for my students where they are taking notes on something specific. So whatever I've decided is the skill or the topic that we're going to be talking about, I like to have sentence frames. I like to have some of those scaffolded supports for students so that they can use them. Again, it's not about assigning it and letting them go. I'm still teaching. I'm still helping them get through the material. I'm just not providing a ton of worksheets and answering questions and providing prompts. The students are coming up with the questions. Now, you can have, question stems. You can come up with one of your mini lessons could be coming up with a list of questions that students could be asking during their small group discussions. That's a great place to do it. But the actual coming to the book club discussion day, they're responsible for completing the reading and coming with their questions and their notes. They're also responsible for contributing to the discussion. That's why the groups are small. The students have to participate. And if my groups are too big, it's easy for, a few students to be talking on task and a few that are off task, or a few that will just let everybody else do the work. So the smaller your groups, the better. You can get them just to be 3, that's perfect. But again, no more than 4. They are also responsible for listening and responding to their peers. So this is one of the huge benefits of book clubs, because when I've done like literature circles and those things, students just read the worksheet. They just read off the things that they brought. But here it has to be a conversation. You're bringing a question and people are talking about the question. So I have to hear what my group has said. I have to think about what they've said, and then I have to formulate a response. Those are real world, authentic conversations. And book clubs only work when every student participates. So creating the right groups and picking the right books is really important. All right, book club meeting days. So if you have a 4-week unit, I would do 4 book club meeting days. I like them on Friday. Some people like them on Wednesdays. It doesn't really matter which day you pick, but I do encourage you to be consistent with it. I like Friday because that means that first week they've had a whole week to read, and so they can get into the book before they have that meeting day. I don't like to do them on Mondays because people will often get into the mindset, or students will often get into the mindset that they'll read over the weekend, and then that doesn't happen, and then they're not ready. As the teacher during a book club meeting day, you should be doing more listening than speaking. And it's so hard, I'm not going to lie, because as some groups really get into discussion, you want to be part of it. It's what we love, and why we're here is we want to be part of those discussions. But in a book club, our job is to be listening more than speaking. Now, that's not to say that if a group is struggling and they can't get people talking, or we're getting like 1 or 2 word answers, it's okay. It's okay to, sit down, get comfortable with them, and try to start some conversation, and then gradually release that back to them. That's totally fine. I'm not saying don't interact with your students. I'm saying, like, resist that urge to just jump in because you hear an amazing conversation. When I did the book club in the library that I talked about earlier, I just loved just standing there. I was with the librarian. We're really good friends, but we were just listening to just the amazing conversations students were having. They were having conversations about the books that led to conversations about life and decisions and those kinds of things. And this was 8th grade, and they were amazing, and I loved them. You're going to rotate around the room. You're going to listen. You're listening, one, for the students one, to see if the students are participating because they have to be talking. But 2, you're listening for the types of questions they have. You're listening again to see if there's anything that you need to come back and reteach, a skill or a concept. If there's anything that you need to come back and do a mini lesson, and again, deciding if it's for that group or for the whole group. This is a question that has to be addressed, and I know a lot of us would really just love to have students read and talk about books and not have to worry about a grade, but that's just not the reality. And so I wanted to present this to you as some options. I am in no way saying that these are all the things that you need to do in a book club. I'm saying that these type of formal and informal assessments are things that work well with a book club. So informal assessments can be reading logs. I'm not a huge proponent of reading logs, but having students somehow track what they're reading could be motivating for some of them. You could have them annotate or use annotation notes. Maybe you're going to do that in the 3rd week of the reading or the unit. I wouldn't have them turn notes in every time because, again, we're trying to create an excitement about the reading and not just a laundry list of activities they have to do. Discussion prep sheets, those are great things to turn in. And I do have my students turn those in every week because I want to see what they've prepared. It's more of just a check, and it's not in the grade book, but it's a informal. I can see what my students are doing. I can also quickly look through there and see if they're having difficulty coming up with the questions. Pardon me. So it's just kind of a quick check-in for every single book club discussion day. You can do quick writes. So again, whatever skill you're having them practice, or skill that you've done a mini lesson on, you can come back and you can have them do a quick write on it, whether that's a reflection quick write or it's some kind of an application quick write, depending on the skill. That's a great place to do it, and you could do that a couple of times throughout the unit. It just holds them accountable for their learning. Vocabulary practice is a little bit harder unless you're having them like track their vocabulary through the whole thing. Reflection sheets. Every discussion day, my students fill out a reflection. You also have exit tickets. So those are some informal ones. Again, I would not suggest doing all of these every day or every unit. It's not necessary, but you wanted to provide you some information on how you can assess. For formal assessments, again, these are just some options. I wouldn't do all of them. You could have them do a literary response at the end of the discussion where they have to pull in evidence from their peers. You could have them do a character analysis, again, pulling in evidence. around their peers in the discussions. You just have them do a formal written response using text evidence, or you can have them work with a discussion rubric score. How well did they discuss? How well were they prepared? A lot of that's reflection, but a discussion rubric score could sit with each group and kind of score if you want to. This is, again, just some options. All right, I am over my time, but I'm going to keep going here. I don't know what slide we're on. There are 18 total slides, but we're going to just keep going. Here's the most common question. The most common question, and the one, even when I did the summit last year with this presentation, the most common question is, how do I choose the right books for the book clubs? And there's no magic answer. The best answer is to pick books your students want to read. And I know some of you are like, okay, well, of course, but how do I know that? So think about what books are your students already reading that they're liking. That's where these conversations and book talks and all of the things we do all year long, that's where that listening and that informal observation comes in. What are the types of books your students like? So look at what books are already reading. What are they choosing for independent reading time? What do they gravitate to when you go to your library days? What books are going to provide the opportunities to demonstrate skills? I know students love graphic novels. They're a great choice for independent reading, but they may not work for your book club. I've done book clubs with graphic novels, so they do work. It just depends on what skill you are trying to have them demonstrate or what you want them to do with it. Choose books that allow students to practice and demonstrate the skills that you've chosen for the unit. You are still in control of the learning. You're still in control of the unit. So help them pick books there. And then most importantly, you're going to want to choose books that you have access to. You're really only limited to the books that you have access to. And that's going to depend on your school, your individual school and your individual district. But I do have some suggestions for you on how you can find enough copies for each book that you have. First, work with your school and your department first. So ask your school librarian, if they can get books. A lot of times they can send a message out to the other libraries, and some school in your district might have enough books for you for your book clubs. You only need a few copies of each book. Again, if you can get like 5 to 6 copies of each book, that's more than enough. That's enough to let somebody check one out if they want, and enough for you to use in class with all of your classes. And then look for your department. And I know you might be thinking like, well, I'm the only one who teaches 8th grade language arts, but use your entire district. So 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, my teaching partner and I wanted to do a whole class novel on Night Divided by Jennifer A. Nielsen. And it was a historical novel, fit in with their social studies. It provided a lot of the things that we were looking for, character development and all of those things. But we didn't have enough copies. We had quite a few because it had been used in a book club before, but we didn't have enough copies for 2 classes to do a whole class novel. So we sent out an email to every teacher in our district that taught English, taught language arts, ELA. And they sent us copies of their books just through inter-district mail, and we were able to complete the unit. So try there. Also, one of the most underutilized places to get books is your public library. Work with the children's librarian at your local library. They are dying to work with the schools. They're dying to work with you to get you the resources that you need, especially when it comes to getting books in the hands of students. So they can pull from their entire library district, and they'll check books out to you that you can use in your classroom. And then depending on where you work, you can ask for donations. When I worked at a private school, I just simply asked parents for books, and a lot of times I got those. You can ask local businesses, or if your district allows you to do donors choose, you can also do that. There's many ways to get the books that you need that are not just asking for donation. So get creative and get out there and get the books that you want and need for your students. And then here's our last slide. If your first round of book clubs doesn't go as planned, don't give up. Do it again. Even if you're doing it this spring and you're like, oh, I'm going to wait and do it again next year, do it again. Reflect on what went well, reflect on what didn't go well, then provide the support that it's going to fill in those gaps where things didn't go well, and then try again. Book clubs really are a fantastic way to get students talking about books, getting them excited about reading, and it puts them in charge. They really want to be in charge, even though they seem like they're so passive right now. They're really not. And then, of course, please don't forget that there is a free planning guide in the teaching resource section of our group. And so go ahead and grab that. It's going to list everything out for you, what you can do before and after. And then if you're interested, and this is not a sales pitch, but if you're interested on getting it even more subtle for you, there is a resource in my Teachers Pay Teachers store called Book Clubs, and it will help you with all of the things that you want if you want a little bit more than just a planning guide. All right, let me go ahead and stop sharing. So I did go over time again, but that's all right. I think book clubs are a really amazing opportunity for you to get your students involved in the planning and the execution of book clubs, and really just an opportunity to give your students some ownership and some responsibilities. You're releasing that responsibility back to students. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. And I know a lot of you are going to be catching this on the replay. And if you're in other locations seeing this, come on over to our group. We would love to have you. Please don't forget to give me a 1 or 2 in the group as to which training you would like for April. All right, have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And I will see you on Monday for our Monday Q&A.